Building games is super hard, especially when you need to think about the production process behind it all. But having a solid production framework can help your game studio succeed. When you know how to structure milestones, estimate effort accurately, use player feedback effectively, you can actually plan timelines that hold up and scope that stays manageable. I asked Yukon from Snoozy Kazoo to break down the framework her team uses and share lessons on how to manage game production. Snoozy Kazoo is a queer-owned indie studio that makes comedic games that are, in their words, really dumb. They take familiar genres, Zelda-likes, roguelites, runners, 3D friendship sims, and make them funner and more digestible. They've successfully shipped Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion and Turnip Boy Robs a Bank, and are close to releasing Hobnobbers and Turnip Boy Steals the Mail. I hope you enjoy the conversation. To get started, could you tell me a bit like how your studio is structured? Like, what's your setup?
Yeah, so we have, okay, let me think. So I'm the producer, director, and I'm also a programmer. And then we have one audio guy who does all that stuff, but he also programs, two artists who are just straight up artists. And then we have I call him a developer because they do both programming and art. So yeah, so we have a good team of people who does stuff. We separate via project. So we have, I guess, two teams essentially that occasionally will like give each other help. So we have the Hobnobbers team, which is doing just Hobnobbers. That is Alexis and Jake. And then we have currently the Riz Dungeon and Turnip Boy Steals the Mail team, which is me, Kiki, and Pearl. So yeah, we like, occasionally we'll jump over and help Hobnobbers. They'll jump over and help us. And it's hard keeping track of two games at the same time. Or I guess three. But we try to, our problem is we keep coming up with ideas and prototyping them for fun, and then they snowball. So we're slowing down, finishing the projects we have, and we're making good momentum.
But I mean, you have 2 games shipped, which is really cool, and they were very well received. What was your process starting out at the beginning? And how did that process change the more you grew and the more experience you got?
Yeah, in the past, we primarily used like Kanban, I think through Trello. And it was a very like starting out point. We just needed something to like keep track. It was really only me, one additional artist, and we had like a marketing guy and then our audio guy Jake as well. And so it was just it was like lower stakes. Tasks were very easily like, we could just Discord each other like, hey, I need this. Hey, I need that. And we had that like core vision for Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, where we were like, okay, we know what we want to make. It was all like stored in my brain. And so I was able to kind of just effectively be like, I need this art asset. I need this, and like share my screen and do that. So it was very like nothing. It was just like notepads and that Trello board and nothing. Turnip Boy Robs a Bank was when the studio matured. We very much needed to like actually figure out a like real structure for keeping track of who's doing what and everything. We actually swapped to Notion, which is a weird choice because we were like, okay, it has like all our notes, we can store all our documentation in here, but also we can set up a database structure to do that like Kanban approach, but we can do it we can do it like based on milestones. So we would have like, okay, because our publisher would help us establish milestones. So we'd be like, all right, we have, to get this area of the bank done. So that's our milestone. And we're just going to break up the tasks in an individual Kanban board just for that. And then once that's done, we check off the milestone and ship it over to our publisher, get our payout, and just it worked until we moved on from it. And Notion's really good for setting up your own custom thing, but it gives you too many controls. And so it was like a headache trying to figure out actually like what I need to set up and do to make this effectively work for us. Do we do separate boards per game? Do we do separate databases per game? There's just too many like questions. And it's like, okay, I need to focus on making the games, not building this elaborate Notion like hellscape. And so that's when we ended up swapping to Codex for Hobnobbers initially and Turnip Boy Steals the Mail. because we're like, okay, that's like number one. I saw the gamification of it, like the decks and everything, and I just fell in love immediately. And it was so funny too because, and I'm not making this shit up. I'm not sponsored. I will say, we literally, and we wrote about it in our newsletter. We literally, I showed it to the team, and the team was like, I don't know if I want to like swap. We have all our tasks here and everything. And I was like, no, I'll handle the transfer. Trust me, this is going to be like awesome. It's really cute. There's like, it's gamified, but it's not gamified in like an obnoxious way. It's just like nice theming, and it still feels like a production suite, but it's not so serious. It's not like Jira or whatever, or Scrum board. And so they're like, all right, fine. And I shit you not, in like 3 hours of just looking around the dashboard, every single person on the team fell in love. They were like, oh my God, this is amazing. We love this. And so it really was just a process of getting all our tasks from Notion into Codex. And then ever since then, I've just been iterating off of the tools that you guys have. So like first we started out just having like decks, and here's our decks. You can take it, put it in your hand, and then we do weekly meetings and be like, okay, what's in your hand? How are you working through that? Do you feel confident you're going to finish your hand by the end of the week? And then we shift over to using milestones and runs. And then we also heavily started like shifting how we handle effort. So with effort, we do like 10 is a week of work. And so what we do is we'll do it every 2 weeks as a run. We determine like, oh, is this enough work for that run for you? And then also, hopefully, is it not too much? And if it is too much, I guess we're comfortable with it moving, like continuing to the next week. But that has been really nice with milestones too, because now we're like, okay, especially because we don't have a publisher this time around, we're trying to do stuff truly by ourselves to build up that like marketing experience. It's really nice to see like, okay, these tasks that we need to do to finish like this section of the game, we can give it all an effort value based on our past experience. We know how long it takes. And then we can make a really good estimate as to when we think that milestone could be done, which is really nice for like planning ahead. We're like, okay. And then like, we're not at the stage yet, but I assume it's going to also be really good looking back, where we're like, all right, so in Hobnobbers, we have like different maps, and it's like, it took us this long to make a map. All right, we can see how much effort it took, how much tasks we had, and we can break it down and be like, all right, the next ones will probably be something similar, so we can use that effort value to keep going. Sorry, I just info dumped, but
No, this is perfect. I'm a bit curious because you mentioned at the beginning you had your publisher kind of give you milestones, and now that you're working without a publisher, you're figuring out the process yourself. What is the thing you learned from the publisher, and how are you kind of building or structuring your milestones now without them? What's your process?
yeah. So originally, when we had a publisher, yeah, we were basically breaking down each zone as milestones. So, with their help, like we had a big meeting where we figured out like, okay, like this is the design of the game. This is our document. How we're going to split it up. But yeah, we always used to split up zones as like white box, and then so like making sure everything's functional and works, and then the art pass of it. And then as well as that the next white box stage could go alongside the art pass. So it was kind of just like basically build out the stage and then implement last milestones art. And so it was a really good workflow for us, because I'm kind of like, I've notoriously been like the only programmer, at least on the first game. Second game, we had a programmer who kind of took over for me because I needed to focus a bit more on the business, but I rejoined like later on. So it's nice because we have like one programmer and they can go do their own thing and they can get ahead. And then the artist can, make sure their vision comes to life and really like fine tune areas. So that's how we kind of used to do it. And we're still like very invested in it because it's worked in the past, but now it's definitely like more of a process where we're trying to, because this Hobnobbers is our first 3D game, so we're trying to like really make sure that the art feels like it's a part of the world, and the world complements the art. So we're trying to do both at the same time now, which is definitely very difficult. We're adapting to it for sure. It's been a while. We're trying to figure things out, but I'm feeling really good about the progress we're making and what we're learning about actually doing that. So we've had several white box zones for Hobnobbers that we've been able to like flesh out and bring art into, and then we've been able to like fine tune that with art already, and it's been really nice. We recently, because we swapped engines, we like restarted, but I think it was a very essential thing for us because we realized the scope of what we were trying to build was way too high, and we needed to cut it down a little bit. We got a little ambitious.
That
Snoozy
would
is
have
like
been also my next question of like how do you define scope? Like what does that mean for you?
yeah, scope is difficult for us. Let's just say, I was a very ambitious kid, and as you know, as a kid, I wanted to start an indie studio. I'm like a little 11-year-old squirt. Like, I want to make indie games and do it with my friends. And what ended up happening is that ambition led me here, but it also continues to lead me down roads where I'm like, okay, maybe we need to back up and reduce scope. And so it's definitely been like a challenge, like trying to drive that ambition down and like kind of bringing the vision of our games down to what we want to be able to reasonably accomplish in a time period. I recently at Spell Collective I was able to meet this person named Dorian. He made Kabuto Park, Manami Lane, and there's a frog roguelite. It's really cool. I'm just forgetting the name off the top of my head. But he did a major push for like making smaller games where it's like why are indie developers building these massive things and like burning themselves out and killing themselves over it. And so that's something we're trying to adopt. So ever since we met him and had those in-depth conversations, it's been like a process of like, okay, our games, can we like downscope the ones we have and focus on making more unique experiences? Because I feel like at the end of the day, our goal is, yes, like to make dumb as hell games. And I don't necessarily want to be boxed into making like one franchise, one idea. And so we want to do a bunch of different things to see how we can extend the dumb into different genres. I mean, that was a thing with Turnip from the start. Like we did a Zelda-like and then a roguelite. So we're like, how can, Hobnobbers is our approach on making friend slop dumber. Steel's Mail is like dumb runner. And so we're like, okay, we want to do a bunch of different things and our scope needs to be small to do that. So now it's helped us recontextualize it. And then that's also gone straight back into like our product management where we're like, okay, we know how long it takes us to actually make do these tasks on the game, and then we can kind of plan out like what assets and stuff we actually need for the rest of it. And then that lets us, using effort values, best feature, we can see like, because there's tons of graphs and stuff on Codex too of like your the effort completed is going up and it's dopamine, it's great, but it allows us to see necessarily how long it took us to make this chunk of the game, and then we can estimate and see how long we need to make the rest of the chunks, and then we can of course cut down if needed based on that. So it's really useful to like have all that data at your fingertips and be like, okay, this is how we did runs effectively, this is how we did milestones, and then we can like fine tune and make sure that moving into the future we actually can get these games done and shipped.
Another approach, I suppose, is something I read in your postmortem. Like you talked about non-attachment or being willing to scrap things if they don't resonate. How does this work in practice? Like, what's the process of detachment?
So one of the big things that I learned in college is that people get way too attached to their projects. And I fell victim of that too as a kid. I had all these like old prototypes I was working on with like these elaborate stories. And I was like so invested. I was like, this is my dream game. I'm going to make it come true. And I think that was really cool. And at some point, it would be nice to like revisit that. But on the flip side, I think that attachment can be really unhealthy because it can force you to essentially like basically stress over detailing and making sure everything's perfect. It can lead you to stress over like the amount of content in your game and the complexity of the systems because it needs to match your like perfect vision. And then that vision will pretty much always be the downfall of the game because you're just like overexerting yourself or your team. And so I learned that like in college and I was like, oh God, wow, yeah, I need to like cut the cord, cut the attachment. And so when I started Turnip, I was like, okay, I have this character. I really like this character, but I'm not like going to die if this game doesn't get made. It's something that I'm interested in, but it's not something that like I feel like my soul needs to tell. And I think like a lot of people really resonated with the messages in the game because that bit of my personality did still come through. Same with the rest of the teams. But I don't believe that, like, Turnip Boy wasn't my dream game. And so it allowed me to really focus on like what actually needed to get done, where I could cut corners, where I could keep scope down so that I could actually get it out and propel both myself and my studio into like the indie space and allow me to actually like basically get resources to build more and more. Not necessarily striving to make a dream game, just keep making games. I mean, I think that's what we all want to do. And so not having that attachment let me kind of like really look at it and be like, all right, what resonates with people and what doesn't, and what can we cut and what can we add. So originally it was supposed to be more of a traditional Zelda like minute where there's not necessarily a lot of dialogue. I think we even had like the old, basically a copy of the Minutes dialogue system. But then we learned that people really like the world and the characters and the dumb jokes we could put in. And so we pivoted and added a full dialogue system. Basically, we didn't intend to, like it wasn't a point, but we did cut back a little on like unique Zelda mechanics in exchange for like more comedy focused stuff. And that's something that, because I didn't have this like core vision of what this game needed to be that I felt so passionately about, we were able to do and pivot without it being like, oh my God, I need it to be my perfect brainchild. So yeah, and I think that helps a lot too in the future with like, every game now is like, all right, we really like this game. We like the idea that we're going for, but what's the core of it? What can we cut? What is unnecessary? And how can we actually bring this to market?
So it's a lot also about just listening to your players while you build instead of just building. I read as well that you take your games to expos to kind of also
Yeah.
receive feedback. Can you talk to me a bit about like how you, or what's your process there, and how does that feedback change your roadmap? Which are the things that you kind of take as, okay, this makes sense, and which are the things that you also can understand, maybe, yeah, it's just some people's opinion but might not move the needle? What's your process there?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. We do a lot of expos just to show a game right away once it starts in development to see what people's initial reactions are. I think a core part of this is really seeing what people resonate with and what people get stuck on. So not necessarily like negative feedback, but where they're like really struggling. With the original Turnip Boy, we found that people just found the whole premise goofy. That was the main focus of it. People were talking about the name of the game and it was spreading around the expo hall. And then people would come over and they would like basically say the game by name without even knowing. So we're like, okay, it's the premise that's really interesting. It's what's drawing people in. And then when they would come, it was a lot of laughter. People were really enjoying it and finding humor in the situations. I think in our first build, we had like a giant worm as the boss because I didn't have time to implement a real boss. And people would like scream and laugh when they saw the worm. And I'm like, okay, this is something that they find funny. How can we make it more funny? And so that became the focus of Turnip Boy rather than like traditional Zelda-like puzzles. So we simplified a lot of mechanics and focused on like, okay, we want to tell an engaging story. And the same can actually be said with the latest installment, Turnip Boy Steals the Mail. When we first showed it, we showed it at GodotCon, just this last GodotCon. Yeah, so this year. And when we showed it to people, once again, we kind of got like reality checked because a lot of our team plays Cookie Run, the game it's based off of, and Cookie Run is notorious for being like brutal. Like it's precision, like you have to be perfect. And so we brought Steals the Mail to GodotCon, very much built like a Cookie Run game. And a lot of people who were already like engaged with the Turnip Boy as a property and have played our past games were like dying, like just eating shit just continuously. And we're like, yeah, they're not here for hardcore gaming mechanics, so we need to calm this down. So right away we cut like in the hall. I was like sitting in the hall, like reducing the speed of everything. And we took a step back and made a more like logistical approach to level design where things are more tile based, but then also like making it more I guess just slower and not as brutal. And so we opened up like gaps that we expected the player to jump through. We basically gave them more mail to collect more dopamine, and then we've pivoted since, and like we're adding halfway through runs you can find characters and talk to them, so more comedy, less bloodthirsty cookie run gameplay. And so it's just kind of like, of course we adding those characters takes more work, but we've decided to like cut down on the amount of levels per area and focus on telling an engaging story through the levels that we actually have. So it's really just like figuring out what your players actually want versus what you think they want in your twisted game dev mind sphere that doesn't know how other people think perfectly at all times.
I mean, it definitely resonates. It's definitely challenging, especially when you kind of love the game you're building or you really want to realize something and then to take a step back and to be like, yeah, I need to also consider other factors. Like,
Yeah.
I'm also curious because I read as well that you kind of, when you got started, especially when you got published, you kind of speed ran learning how to operate a business. And as much as building a game is art and it's something that everybody's passionate about, you are essentially building a business, building something that needs to sustain your life and needs to sustain the life of your
Yeah.
teammates. What are some of like the operational things that surprised you about it, especially in terms of production?
Yeah, that's a really good question. 'Cause yeah, that's something that you don't really think about right away when you start an indie studio. I remember when I started Snoozy, my friend Jordan Kegler he basically harped into my brain. He's like, "You are not starting a game studio, you are starting a small business." And so that became like kind of a mantra for me ever since, where I'm like, okay, I have to deal with all of the business stuff that is just part of the job. And I like I have to embrace that and understand that. And so obviously like things just caught me off guard, like taxes, insurances, like that's shit. Legal. I have an email chains with my lawyers that go like you could make a book. Like it's ridiculous. And well, it's not ridiculous. It's what I got starting an indie studio, and that's the whole point. When it comes to production, it's definitely like you need to really figure out, especially if you're someone who is on the team and like building as well as like the business owner, you need to really like keep a strong eye as to like how much you actually can do a week, like when you plan ahead your tasks and stuff. We have that value where it's like, oh, we try to do 10 effort a week. And it's like, I don't think I can do 10 effort on a game a week. I think I can do maybe 5, but that's on top of uh emails, bills, random crap that pops up. We went to Sweden. I said this a little earlier. Yeah, we went to Sweden and my bank account completely locked up. And destroyed all our connections for benefits, payroll, like everything. And I'm just like, and so it's like figuring out all of that, fixing that. It's all fixed now, thankfully. But fixing all of that and, going through it is definitely like a really big part of the job. And you can't not plan around that. You have to admit when you need help. And like, we have other members of the team stepping in to do code that I'm not able to do at that time, or shifting just focus and going like, okay, we're going way more art right now. Like just get the art ahead, and then I can come back later and dive back into programming. But it's yeah, you're a person with a limited amount of stamina, and you need to make sure that number one, your production is planning around that, but number two, you're just not killing yourself because this is supposed to be fun. But yeah, it is a small business.
Then I have like 3 more final questions for you. One is,
Okay.
I'm wondering like what are your like maybe major production lessons from, let's say, tax evasion that directly changed how you approach robs a bank, that and maybe something that now from robs a bank is changing how you're approaching building or production with steals the mail. So like maybe the things that you kind of are shifting from the one game to the
Mhm.
other based on your experience in production.
Yeah, I think the number one thing for us is milestones, like 100%. When we first did commits tax evasion, development actually went without a hitch. Like, we didn't have a single issue getting the game to market, and there was no delays or anything, which is crazy for a first game. Like, I'm shocked. Every night I go to bed and I'm like, that was insane. I don't know how we did that. But don't worry, we had plenty in Rob's a Bank. It caught up to us. But milestones is definitely the key of it, because you really get a sense of what your game is going to look like when it's done, and then you can really plan around what a complete product actually looks like. And that allows you to make decisions of okay, well, I can add this feature and it would be really cool. And it's like, do you have space in the milestones? Does this fit in? Does this click? And one of the core things that we find really important to work alongside milestones is our pillars. For Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, we really focused on respect. We focused on silly tone and making sure that everything was very comedic. And then we also wanted to deliver a very short experience and have that mirror with the development time. So when you come up with different ideas for your game, we're like, oh, I could add this really cool feature. I could add, I don't know, we wanted to add a whole dog companion in Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. And it was the tangerine dog. And so we're like, and zone 2, you can get the tangerine dog. And then we ran it through our pillars, and we're like, okay, this is going to be a lot added to our development time, because now this like thing needs to follow you through every map. And it's like, I'm sorry if you haven't played Commits Tax Evasion, but you do go to space at the end of it. And it's like, how does a dog work in space? It's too much. And so we were like, okay, that goes against our pillars. We can't reasonably slot it into our milestones. So therefore, it doesn't make sense for us to add it. And so it was something that we shelved, and we actually added in Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. And so I guess my biggest push is ever since Myths Activision, we've rocked that milestone and pillar structure. So in Robs a Bank, we did a very similar thing. I think our pillars were the exact same. It was just, I think the comedy was expanded to just be a dumb action movie. It was trying to be over the top and stupid. We had the intro sequence itself has a van crashing through a wall, and it's we just want everything to be dumb. But I think the core of it, of the milestone structure, stayed true, where we're okay, we're breaking out this bank that we're developing into zones, and those zones are each milestones that we can plan out and develop and break down. So we basically would draw out the design of it, we would plan out all the individual assets. Basically, it was a more broken down version. We would rip apart a zone a lot more thoroughly to understand what exactly needs to be produced to make that milestone work. And we do that in advance. So we'd be like, okay, we got to do zone 3 next month. Let's rip it apart, design it, figure out everything we want to add, so that when we do, we have a good comprehensive list and we don't stress ourselves out too much on producing the assets, and we can maybe get a head start now. Turnip Boy 2, unfortunately, had a lot of delays, because I think the amount of work that we needed to do was just kind of overwhelming. We ended up adding a bunch of core systems to the Turnip Boy property, like destructible props, which is something we didn't have, and that added a lot of development time, as well as just the sheer amount of guns, enemies, NPCs. There's just a lot of content in it. And so that slowed us down and definitely hurt our milestones. Things got a little scrambled. But now with our modern games, it's a lot easier to actually tell how much work something's going to be, because we are still doing that breakdown structure where we're okay, this is what actually needs to be done for this milestone. But now we have the effort value estimation, as well as using that to determine, okay, how far or how long is this milestone going to take? And then also being able to test it in real time with runs, where we're okay, are we actually making the progress that we believe we're going to we need to make? So it's just nice having that data. That's my biggest thing about Codex, is that you just get so much data at your fingertips, where you can be this is not working, or this is fantastic, keep up the work. And that's really good. It's an amazing feeling to see that. I'm obsessed with that graph on the run page, just that graph going up.
I'm glad that resonates. I love that too. What's the biggest production mistake you made early on that you could share, so that other studios could learn from it and maybe try and avoid it?
Announcing early, and also pushing yourselves to announce a game at a certain time. So for the biggest example was Hobnobbers. We really wanted to announce it at that mix event that we announced it at. and we wanted to get the page up so we could get wish lists. The problem is that Hobnobbers was definitely very like half baked at that point, and we focused a lot on a more storyboard approach where at the beginning of the Hobnobbers trailer there's like a big mural and it tells the story of like the Hobbs, the lady goddess, and everything. Um, and it's a really cool visual, and I'm very proud of the team for being able to accomplish that. But it definitely put them under a lot of strain because, the game was not there yet to be shown. And then we're trying to compensate with a really impressive piece that we pushed ourselves too hard to actually make in a short amount of time. We essentially ended up having to, that was an unfortunate crunch at that time. And I didn't have a lot of data with Codex to show that it would have taken that much time. And so we unrealistically promised that we would do an event that we weren't prepared to do. So the biggest advice I could recommend is don't put yourself under that strain and basically announce the game when it's ready to be announced. If you don't feel comfortable about hitting an event, just, getting a trailer together, getting gameplay footage together, you're scared of what people are going to think about it, don't announce it yet. Wait, because you're going to regret that you did it. And then next thing you know, a year later, your game's going to look totally different and you're going to have to basically re-announce it anyways. So I would say that is probably my biggest advice.
Thanks for watching all the way through. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more game production breakdowns like this one.